Today we are joined by the Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety, Reagen Allen, once again to discuss a very important matter, which is 16 days, the 16 days campaign of no violence against women and children. Minister Allen will engage us on this worrying issue that continues to plague our society. The Minister will also unpack how the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety is attending to this matter during this campaign. Minister Allen, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you so much for having me, and good day to all of the listeners. This is a very difficult conversation to have, considering that just in this week, via social media, we again saw gender-based violence. We've again seen how men predominantly are not protecting our females. So I'm, under the circumstances, happy to be discussing here with you.
Speaking of which, I mean, you're referring to the CPUT student that was stabbed by a student from UWC, and this happened outside a university residence in Balha just this recently. And this year also marks 32 years of the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. And we see it over and over. What are some of the statistics telling us?
Ibi, that is my gripe. It is my concern because you've highlighted it. It's 32 years where we have been creating awareness around gender-based violence, around no violence against women and children for 32 years. And if we look at the crime stats, if I consider the year 2022, over our entire country, there was 53,000 cases in terms of gender-based violence, which includes rape, assault, and domestic violence matters. Here in our province, we saw a figure of 4,442. Deeply unacceptable. Hence the interventions, creating awareness around the scourge in order for us to systematically address gender-based violence will have to be as a result of various conversations, but also to place the interventions front and center.
Why, in your opinion, do we continue to have these high rates of GBV?
It is multifaceted. And when we analyzed our crime data, we have seen that even though the trends are showing that we are making some inroads in certain communities, overall, we know we have a long way to go. So there's multiple conversations and discussions that is happening, and I am delighted that we are having this conversation now, considering that we are heading into our festive season, where we are actually seeing increases in gender-based violence. We often, and I've often stated that if I consider the crime of rape, it is a person personifying evil to a large extent, and that is not what we want in our communities. And this awareness will be about various departments, various stakeholders all coming to the party, playing a role to create awareness, but also alerting communities of the interventions. I'm later going to disclose also our GBV Command Center hotline number, because we are wanting to ensure that any person, male or female, if that particular person is in need or is facing a difficulty, to reach out, speak out, so that we can ultimately ensure that there is assistance provided to that particular resident.
What are some of the initiatives that your department specifically are undertaking in order to combat GBV?
In the opening line, you have indicated the role that I'm currently playing, and that is police oversight and community safety. Over the last year, we've been very clear that we are needing to ramp up our oversight, and it should lead to better service delivery. So we monitor the implementation of the Domestic Violence Act, and where we find that there's inefficiencies or shortcomings, we address that. We do post-monitoring evaluations to ensure that there is actually assistance provided. That means that any person that ultimately has a protection order in a particular precinct will get the assistance if he or she contacts the South African Police Service. We wouldn't want to have a protection order that is not delivered, a protection order that is not served on an accused person. We would want to ensure that the law actually works for victims. But also the work we do with the South African Police Service, where we have men's dialogues. Currently the data is showing us that it's roughly 98% of all gender-based related crimes are perpetuated by males. We are wanting men to stand up. The work we are doing in terms of education, cultural affairs and sport, together with sporting clubs, to ensure that there is consistent messaging around the role that men should ultimately play to protect females. I think you don't need to be a father. You don't need to have a sister. You don't need to ultimately even have a wife to stand up against gender-based violence. Just as a human, just as a person, inherently we must know that gender-based violence is wrong, that if you perpetuate any crime of rape, assault, or any matter where you would want to take someone's life, because it does include murder of females and of children, you wouldn't want that particular person to not be held accountable.
I guess that leads to my next question, because it's like you said, it's multifaceted, and you can't just rely on one aspect to try and solve it. We can't just like look to government or look to police. We as society also have a role to play, especially men. So what can we do?
It's very important that if any person is aware that a female or a child is being mistreated, being assaulted, or there's any forms of potential rape that is happening, is to report those matters. For those matters to be reported, we would undertake to also ensure that our court watching brief ultimately monitors those cases. We would want to see that justice is served. I am often plagued by the one question of, in communities and in various communities, and especially where I'm coming from, people would want to keep certain things in the house. You shouldn't speak about it. However, that has led to a perpetuation of certain crimes within certain communities. We would want people to have the freedom to speak out and also restore the trust in the justice system, because rape in our country is currently one of the most underreported crimes. And as a country in the year 2022, we spent 21 billion rand to fight the scourge of gender-based violence. 21 billion rand. However, we have seen increases. So if you look at that, and many commentators were saying that if you applied a business model to it, it would mean that that business should be shut down.
Yeah.
Because funding and taxpayers' money is being spent. However, we are seeing increased levels. Hence, we have been asking clear questions to ourselves, but also to national government. As a Western Cape government, we are wanting to step in and step up the work we do with social development, making sure that we have safe houses. And those safe houses, I'm proud to say, that is led by social development, where we have the most in the entire country. So that if there is a person that is in need, that person will actually get help and assistance. But also in holding SAPs accountable, so that a resident can feel or know that if I report this particular matter, I will get the help and assistance that I need. But it does take communities to stand up. It even starts at a primary school level to teach and to educate our young boys around bullying, around gender-based violence, so that they do not become the abusers of the future.
I guess it's a snowball effect, because it starts with little things and then people excuse it for like, okay, boys will be boys and this is what they say and this is what they do. But that snowballs eventually into, like you said, it perpetuates into bigger behavior and more dangerous behavior. But just coming back to what you were talking about, the most underreported. When it comes to reporting, though, for a woman that goes through such a traumatic event, there's firstly the shame, and then there's that, if I go and report this, how are you going to make me feel when I'm in that situation reporting the crime? Because so many times we've seen victim shaming. We've seen questions like, but what did you do? What did you wear? And things like that, which are not questions that should be asked. There should be more empathy. There should be more sympathy with the victim. Are these steps being taken for, where it is reported, those officials, those officers, those police people, are they Are they being trained better into how to handle those kinds of situations?
Ibi, thank you so much for this particular question. We have seen where we have ramped up our oversight in terms of the domestic violence response that is needed at a local SAP station. Currently in our province, each and every SAP station would have a gender-based violence desk. We have ensured via our oversight to ensure that there's adequate officers that are trained in the Domestic Violence Act, but also in how to effectively deal with a person that is a victim. So when any person goes to the SAP station and that person indicates that it is a gender-based violence related matter, that person must actually be taken to the victim empowerment room.
Okay.
I want to say it publicly. If any person is aware that that process hasn't been followed, they must reach out either to our office or to the police ombudsman's office so that we can hold those officers duly accountable. Every community would ultimately have a concern or complaint about a certain matter within a policing precinct. We want those complaints actually in the system so that we can effectively deal with those officers that are either not delivering a service or is asking those questions. We would never want any particular female to go back and negotiate with an abuser. You don't negotiate with an abuser. SAP should never ask, what did you wear? They should never ask, what did you do? The person is vulnerable. He or she is coming to that particular SAP station to get help and assistance and should get the help and assistance. Ibi, I'm also have taken it so personal by making sure that whenever I visit a SAP station, one of the key areas that I want to go and see is the victim empowerment room. I actually look at the roster. When last someone actually completed a roster that they have been active in that particular victim empowerment room. And that room must actually be utilized so that it's a space that is conducive for that particular victim to get the help and assistance. But there we've also even stepped up further. We have a referral pathway with the Department of Social Development in the Western Cape. So any particular person that has a complaint can then get the help and assistance via social development as well. So we continue to take it deeply personal because we would want to be a government that cares, a government that uproot any forms of gender-based violence within our communities. And like I've said, it personifies evil, and we wouldn't want those perpetrators to walk the streets freely. They must actually be behind bars.
Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety, Reagen Allen, thank you so much once again for joining us for this very, very difficult topic. And let's hope that with the interventions and us as society, we also need to step up, especially men in communities that need to step up and take action where that is concerned, and also be an example for our young men in the community as to how to better treat the women and children in our society, because I think only then will we start seeing a turnaround where we start stamping out this kind of behavior. Reagen Allen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And our theme around Speak Out and Protect Yourself, we will be rolling it out throughout the entire 16 days of activism, of no violence, because we wouldn't want violence. And thank you that we could have this difficult conversation. And to all the men that's listening, I trust that you will help and assist to protect our women so that they are able to walk freely and ultimately live a life of dignity. Thank you.